Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Comprehension Strategies workshop. My name is Cynthia. Happy to see you in the audience today. Thank you for sticking or checking out the channel, brand new channel, Learning Blueprints, brought to you by Iris Reading. Today we are talking once again about comprehension strategies. So if you're having a hard time, and maybe we feel like, I know, thinking back to when I was in high school. So again, before we start again, my name is Cynthia. I'm one of the instructors with Iris Reading. Iris Reading specializes in speed and memory technique workshops. I've been with Iris Reading for about 3 years now, but I can remember back in my high school literature class, for example, some of the things that I remember reading, I wasn't understanding them automatic, like it wasn't happening as fast as I wanted it to, right? I remember, since English is not my first language or my second, there were a lot of pieces of literature that you have to read through in high school that, for some people it just doesn't make sense. And for me, I'm not going to say who it was or what it was, but it was definitely a struggle. And I remember thinking, maybe I just don't get it. But at the time, I hadn't really understood what it meant to understand a subject, to understand or to actually comprehend when you're reading, what you should be asking. Most of us feel that it should be automatic, but that isn't the case for everybody. And more importantly, it's not the case for every piece of literature or every magazine or every article that you read. It's not always going to happen automatically. So in those instances where you are struggling, not a problem, because we've got your back on that. We have uncovered 6 questions that you can ask with whatever it is you are going to read. If you're just feeling like it's not working out for you, that is okay. We'll run through the questions. We'll run through why those specific questions are important. And then we are going to actually take a subject that most of us maybe are fairly familiar with, and we're going to tear that subject apart to see if we actually do comprehend or not. So with that, I want to share really quickly, we will be reading some articles, and we've put them in a Dropbox link called irisreading.com/comp. So if you would like to pop those links up in a separate tab in your browser, you're more than welcome to do so. You don't have to. I'm going to share them on my screen as well, but if you don't want to maximize the window here on YouTube, that's fine. Just pop it up in a separate tab in your browser, okay? And again, that's irisreading.com/comp. Now, I am curious to know, feel free to drop either in the comment section if you're watching this video in the future, or in the chat section right now, if you've ever heard of us at Iris Reading. So a little more about us: we are known for our speed and memory technique workshops. Those have been taught all over the world, 100 cities around the world. We are obviously looking to grow that number every day. So if you've never heard of us, drop your city in the chat. That just lets us know we have a new target on our map. And so we would love to come to a city by you to teach any one of our fantastic workshops. We've also worked with community colleges, Ivy League colleges, Google, LinkedIn, NASA, many high schools in the United States. We've taught these workshops in Singapore. I believe we've also taught them in Canada and in a very small town, which I found really funny, which is the town where I grew up in Puerto Rico. Very small, but we were down there as well. So we've been everywhere, mostly, but we want to keep expanding. We want to keep filling out like a little scratch off map we have where we hit a new city. So again, let us know if you've heard of us, if you haven't, and check out our website as well. I am going to share a discount code for you at the end of the presentation. So if you want to take an advanced version of any of the courses that we have, our founder and CEO Paul Nowak teaches those. Tremendous teacher, has a real passion for teaching how to learn, which is something that maybe most of us didn't necessarily, maybe we don't initially understand what that means. You think we go to school, we pass the test, that's us learning, but learning is definitely something deeper than that. And so he is completely dedicated to this field of learning, reading as best possible, as fast as possible. So I do recommend his workshops. And again, you can find those on our website at irisreading.com. All right, so, oh, and one more thing, we are on social media. So if you want to check us out, you want to see what's going on with us, what's coming new, a perfect example, this comprehension strategies workshop, when we released it, we only released it to a very small group of people that were already following us on YouTube. And so, or they were already subscribers, right? And so we are pressure cooking another presentation very soon, and I'll give you a hint as to what it is. It's about finding your best learning methods, or do you have a specific, let me break it down a little further. So most of us think that we're either visual learners or we do better when we hear things, right? Some people learn best by touching, right? And so we're still putting that presentation together. Not exactly sure when we're releasing it, but if you do check out, if you do subscribe, you'll be the first to know when we launch that. And that was the case with this comprehension strategies workshop. So we have a book club on Facebook. It's called Book Lovers Assemble, where we talk about all things related to books. What are you reading? Why do you hate it? Why do you love it? Right? And random questions. One of the questions that we had recently was like, what is the weirdest thing you have ever used as a bookmark? And it was very interesting. So check that out if you want to participate. We are on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube. Our latest TikTok was actually filming on the Royal Caribbean cruise ship, where we discovered a library. We had no idea that cruise ships even had libraries. So that was a nice little sanctuary for me those 4 days we were at sea. On Instagram, we're posting like memes or reading or learning related memes. And on YouTube, our founder and CEO has recently launched a series of webinars. One of them was on the very famous ChatGPT, right? And if it's something that you can use, not necessarily to write your paper, as we've been reading, some students have been using that to write like 4 or 5 page papers, but more in the area of quizzing you, right, or to help you study. You can use it as a study buddy, and he breaks down how you do that. If you want to check out the channel. Now, when we get into the questions, because again, to comprehend something, we have to ask the questions, right? We have to have a question and an answer, and then we understand it, right? We have 6 questions that we have discovered can help you get a deeper comprehension on a subject or better understanding on a subject. Now, if you've never thought about these questions, that's okay. We've learned throughout the years, individually and as a team, that we don't always learn how to learn in school. We learn that we have to learn, but we don't learn how to, right? Just like we learn we have to memorize things, but we don't learn how to, right? You only learn how to read one time. That's it. And then you never go back to assessing your reading skills or how your reading techniques, your reading strategies. Of course, there are classes that are designed to help you maybe promote better comprehension or spelling, right? But when it comes to just the act of reading, you only do that one time, and that's in kindergarten or preschool, and then you're done. You're expected to read the next 70 years using those methods. So I went on a tangent, but we have uncovered 6 questions that we hope can help you better understand whatever it is you're trying to learn. These are generic questions. We are playing around with creating like a worksheet or some kind of a bookmark or a sticky note or something that you can use as a guide if you're looking to just retrain yourself. So let's go through the 6 questions and then we'll break them down. First one is, can you explain what you are learning? Okay. Second is, what are the different perspectives on this information? Third, what is your self-knowledge? Okay. Fourth, can you empathize? All right. Fifth, how can this be applied practically? And the 6th question, how has this been interpreted by others? Okay. So we're going to break down what all of these questions have to do with your comprehension, why you should be asking them, and how it will help. All right. Now, first, we want to see what your current comprehension skills or strategies are. How are they working for you this Friday morning at, it's 9:10 here in Chicago. So how are they working for you? All right. Do you feel like they're sharpened, or are they those types of tools that you keep in the toolbox for like 5 years and then you take them out and they're all dull? All right. So let's see how your tools are in your brain when we're talking about reading. We're going to read something together. It's called Focus Rituals. Okay, and you can find it at irisreading.com/comp, or you can read it off of my screen as well. This is the article. You'll notice there's a 2-minute timer going off in the middle right here. Okay, so I will disable my webcam while we read. Just read normally. I want you to read to understand. Obviously, that goes without saying, but just gonna emphasize it again. So here we go, okay? Just 2 minutes of reading. You don't have to read the entire article, just read to comprehend. Here we go, everyone. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, very good. So that was 2 minutes of reading. Hopefully we understood the majority of what we were reading, but again, if not, that's okay. That just means we're still trying to figure out how to comprehend things best way. Okay. So give me a percentage if you'd like as to what you understood. Did you understand 60, 70, 80% of what you read? Now, the reason we do this is because we are very much not fans of the, and I don't want to say the American, because I know that this is also done in South America as well. So we'll just term it as reading comprehension exams or comprehension testing or standardized reading exams. Right? So you know how we would maybe do these standardized exams where we would read for an hour or something, and then we would answer some questions, right? So what were to happen if, let's say, if you were a slow reader, you only have enough time to answer 19 of the 38 questions for a standardized reading test? Well, you would get a 50%, right? So that's an F, but what it's really not taking into account is what if you answered those 19 correct? You still get an F, right? And so we don't think that's a very fair way of assessing comprehension, only because there's that timer, and some of us just don't do well under pressure. So we can't necessarily change the system. We'd love to. We would love to create some kind of revolution where we're changing the standardized exams. But for now, all we can do is help you comprehend. For one, help you read faster, but for another, help you comprehend faster as well. Okay, so if you want to share your comprehension percentage from that article we read, go ahead. No worries if you don't want to, you don't have to. Okay, now let's talk about why this matters. So we said that we would be breaking down a subject that most of us probably think we understand pretty well. Okay, and the subject that we're breaking down today, and actually, in case you're interested, we're actually starting a series of these. So next week we will be breaking down a completely different subject. Okay, but for today we are talking about gravity. Okay, so most of us are like, well, yeah, I get gravity. I totally get it. Okay, what goes up comes down. The apple fell from the tree. It hit the guy on the head, right? So we all know, we all know the story. We all know gravity, right? So it's safe to say that most of us have fairly good comprehension on the subject, right? So then if that's the case, we should also be able then to explain how the theory of relativity ties into gravity. How does that all work together? How do quantum physics tie into all of it? Or even if those feel a little too complex, how does distance affect gravity, or what is the relationship? How are we affected between distance and gravity? Okay. Now you might be thinking, well, I don't know. Well, then that's the point, pretty much. We can't necessarily claim we understand it if we can't even answer these three questions, right? And so, which is funny because we leave 4th or 5th grade thinking that we get this pretty well, but turns out just by these three, I mean, I'm not saying that, you don't, but I know that when we were researching this, I didn't know. So then I was like, I probably have to take a step back, okay? So let's get into the first question. Okay, the first question. Can you explain what you are learning? Now, unfortunately, we have noticed that most people will stop after trying to explain something. So they will explain it maybe to the wind or to the wall, and then if they're able to do it, they stop. Okay? They don't try to understand anymore. And maybe you're this type of student as well. I know I was once upon a time, so there's no shame in admitting it. But the purpose, what we want you to do primarily is to explain it to somebody, and this somebody should be somebody that actually has never heard of what you're talking about. So maybe your sister, maybe a family member, right? Somebody who doesn't have a lot of insight on the subject, because we want them to ask you questions. We want them to poke holes in what you think you know really well. Okay, and then just simply saying, well, that's just the way things are, that's just how it is, that's not a good enough answer. Like if someone were to ask you, okay, well, then why does the apple fall down when you toss it up in the air? Why does it come back down? Why? Saying it's just gravity is not a good enough answer. It's not enough. Okay, so we want to make sure that we can explain the why in depth. We really like on Reddit, if you check out reddit.com, there's this thing called ELI5. Okay, and ELI5 is great because it stands for explain like I'm 5 for one. And so if you have a question, if you have a subject that you need broken down, and you want someone to explain it to you as if you were 5 years old, ELI5 is great for that. Okay, so you'll notice some of the questions here. If gravity waves are affected by gravity, then how does a black hole gravity escape the even horizon? Well, that question was written a little weird. How would living with lower gravity affect health negatively? Is gravity a force or a characteristic of space, right? How does gravity affect time? Dumb it down for me as much as possible. So we shouldn't be intimidated by these subjects. There are people that have explained. You'll notice there are many comments on here, 195, 7, 3, 23, 21. So the odds of you finding something that will make sense are good, high. All right, so Reddit is great for that. You'll notice some of the explanations we've put here. So again, something to keep in mind when we are maybe looking to see what other people's explanations are, then we can kind of tie it back to how we explain the subject, okay? It doesn't all have to come out of you. We can use different tools to help us better that explanation. Chat GPT is also good as well, right? Explain gravity in the simplest terms. I just put that in there and it gave me 4 mini paragraphs. Okay, so you have different tools at your disposal to help you if you're struggling with the creative process of coming up with an explanation in simple terms. You know, another thing that we really like is using Feynman's technique or Feynman's method of taking notes, right? And so when you're taking those notes, one of the steps in Feynman's technique is to explain something in complex terms and then to explain it in technical terms as well, because if we are explaining something only using technical terms, we might run the risk of literally just repeating what we have memorized in the passage. So can you say that you actually understood and you understand it and it makes sense to you if you're doing that? Not necessarily, not if we're regurgitating the same thing we read on the page. That's the author speaking, not us. Okay, it's not really going through our thought processes. It hasn't made sense to us. So we want you to be creative with how you try to explain or how you work through the explanation process. I know it takes time and it feels like it's going to take time. I mean, we're talking about 6 different questions, but the goal again is to deepen our understanding. So yes, it has to take a little bit of time. Okay, so this is the first dimension I call, just because we're talking about gravity and space. So we'll go into dimensions. We'll say this is the first dimension to better understand gravity. Okay, now let's get into the second, which are the different perspectives on this subject. And we're staying in harmony with our theme of gravity. Okay, so what are the different perspectives on gravity? Well, you'd be surprised, actually. We did not expect to find what we found. I thought it was, I mean, I'm still in shock with what I found. So I'll just share that with you. There is an organization called the Anti-Gravity Alliance, and they claim, obviously you say it in the name, they claim that gravity is a lie. Okay, so they have some questions on their main page. It says, how do birds, bats, and insects fly? How do airplanes fly? Why do balloons float up? Right? They say first they said the earth was flat. Then they told us F equals ma. Now they tell us E equals mc squared. What's next? So if you think, well, this is just one website, one group of people, nope. They have a whole list of supporting websites, and amongst these, we were surprised to find that the Scientology, the Church of Scientology, is on here as well. So maybe we want to look into that and learn a little bit more. If you think, okay, well, maybe they're all just friends, you know, that's a very small group of people that think this way. Well, the National Center for Science Education is saying that gravity is only a theory. So when we think about the word theory and compare it to the word fact, there's a bit of a discrepancy there, isn't there? Because most of us probably thought that gravity was fact. It is, right? Where we thought that. I mean, we know that if you drop a phone, it's going to hit the ground. Is that not? That's a fact. That's going to happen. So how is gravity just a theory? Moving on, we've found individuals that are submitting dissertation for PhD, and someone wrote that gravity is a myth. Okay. If you want a copy of this paper, I have it. If you want to read it, it was interesting. And we also found an astrophysicist by the name of Dr. Brian Keating, who does not believe in gravity either. So there's something to think about now, right? We have all of these organizations, all these websites, even religion that is claiming that gravity is not a real thing. So you might reason, oh, well, you know, they are X, Y, Z, but it's good to think about it. It's good to challenge what you think you know with what they claim they know, right? And then you can kind of prepare your defense as to why you think what you think, or why you believe what you believe. And I'm not taking a side. I'm not saying that gravity is not or is or anything like that, but I will say that I was pretty shocked to find that amount of information. There's a lot more that we didn't include on here. So when you're learning something, the odds of you finding in a different perspective, you will. You will. That's one of the wonders of Google. You can find anything on there. So that is our second step. We want you to look at other people's perspectives. We want you to challenge what you think you know with what they think they know, and come up with an explanation to defend. Okay. So that is our second dimension, the different perspectives. The third is our self-knowledge. Okay. Self-knowledge, and despite what most people say, it actually is all about you when we're talking about learning. Okay. It is 100% about you. It has to be, right? It has to be. It is a personal thing. We want you to make learning as personal as possible. So how can you apply what you're learning with your day-to-day activity, right? We want you to look for function and purpose. And this is really important, especially in those subjects where you're just like, this is so pointless, right? You may think, I don't care about gravity. I don't give no cares of the subject at all. But think about some of the things that you do on a daily basis. If you use eye drops, for example, you don't have to worry about the eye drops floating up into the atmosphere. They're going to fall either on your face, or if you have good aim, directly in your eyeballs. But that's a very simple way of just thinking of how what you're learning can be tied back to your day-to-day. Okay, so this is an important step when we're struggling to find the purpose of what we're learning. Don't feel like you know, you can skip the step. Again, remember the goal is to ultimately understand as best as possible. Okay, so that is our self-knowledge. Now, our next dimension is empathy. All right, can you empathize with this information? And we want you to tap into your emotions. What is that saying? It says people never forget what you, or people will forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I know we're talking about reading right now, but we do want to tap into those feelings. Okay, so for example, can we empathize with individuals who maybe have to go through periods of time with lesser of a gravitational pull than while here on Earth, like astronauts, right? So what are some things that we do on a day-to-day basis that maybe they can't do as easily up in space, right? One of them being just taking a shower. How do you take a shower up in space? How do you take a bath, right? So that kind of feels like it'd be pretty chaotic. Okay, so and I actually found a video on TikTok of an astronaut that washes her hair up in space. I don't think that it's going to share the audio, but I am going to walk you through what she's sharing. So let's go ahead and watch this. And I hit the wrong button. All right.
To get started, these are the things I need. A bag of warm water, a little no-rinse shampoo, towel, and my comb. What I like to do is start by just putting some hot water squirting it onto my scalp.
So she squirts the warm water
And I
onto
have
her
a mirror
scalp.
here so I can kind of watch what I'm
She
doing.
watches it through a mirror herself.
Sometimes the water gets away from you,
Ah,
and you try and catch as much as you can.
she got to catch the water.
And I just work the water up through to the end of my hair.
Works the water, oh my gosh, all the way through the tips of her hair.
And I take my no rinse shampoo
She puts the no rinse
and squirt it
shampoo.
also on the scalp.
She puts that
a
on
little
the
bit.
scalp.
And rub it in. Again, kind of working it out to the ends.
And she works it out to the end.
Sometimes I'll actually take my comb,
She'll brush it through.
work it all the way to the ends. And I like to take my towel while I have the shampoo in there and just kind of work it. Because without standing under running water, you kind of need to use the towel a little bit to help get some of the dirt out.
To help get the dirt out, she said. She'll rub it into her scalp.
I like to follow that by a little more water.
More water.
It's called no rinse shampoo, but I think it's best to use a little water with it.
Even though it's no rinse, she says, it works better with a little water. And she combs it all the way through. As you can see.
It actually feels kind of squeaky clean right now.
She said it feels squeaky clean.
Now I'll take the dry part of my towel.
And she takes
We use towels for quite a while here, since we have limited supplies. We use them wisely. I think that's pretty good. And now as my hair dries, as the water evaporates from my hair, it will become humidity in the air, and then our air conditioning system will collect that into condensate, and it won't be long, and our water processing system will turn that into drinking water.
So whatever floats into the, right, as she lets it air dry, that'll be taken in by the system on the ship, and that'll be filtered through the water filter system, and then that'll turn into drinking water. And that is how an astronaut washes her hair up in space. And if you want to learn more, the account is Lord of the Stars on TikTok. I don't even know, like, for someone that has, you know, big, thick, curly hair, I don't think that that would work necessarily for me. I'd like to learn a little bit more. Maybe we can have the Lord of the Stars join us when on an episode here on this learning blueprint. I'm in shock. I watch this every week, and it always is like, oh my gosh, I feel so bad. But, right, they love it. There's this obviously a career choice. I think it's a very small price to pay if you do enjoy your work, working up in space. I think it's commendable. I just know that for myself, washing my hair up in space, seeing that it is as wild and thick as it is, I don't know if that would work for me. So obviously I tapped into my feelings. Maybe taking a shower up in space is not something that concerns you. Let's think about some other things that we do down here on Earth, right? I don't know, like maybe using the bathroom. If you want to research that, you might be interested to find some really descriptive information on everything that goes into play when training an astronaut to use the porcelain throne up in space. Another one is something like burping that we do down here on Earth that happens. It's just like an automatic thing. Well, up in space, if you burp, there's a chemical reaction in your intestines that we have read causes something called chunky bubbles. So, you know, you can interpret that however you'd like. You might be thinking, well, what happens if we'll stop there. But you notice now we're getting into more questions. We're researching this topic a little bit more. Maybe it piqued your interest, all these what appear to be odd questions, but all questions are good questions, okay? So we wanna think about this. We wanna tap into our emotions again. We wanna clearly understand the subject from all areas. So this is empathy. Empathy is probably my favorite one of the 6 questions. Let's move on to practical application. So how is this applied in the larger world? Okay, how is this applied in the larger world? So with gravity, it's very simple. If we throw a ball, we know it's going to hit the ground. No surprise there, right? No surprise at all. So we want to think about this again, especially with those classes, subjects that we're not jiving with. Okay, like for example, I've never been a fan of math, never been a fan of algebra, always thought there's no way I'm ever going to need this in the real world. And then surprise, surprise, nursing school, it like was like that to me when I started nursing school. It was really, really something traumatic, I can even say. But it was like I had to learn, you know, a whole year worth of math in like 3 weeks because it carries over in pharmacology. So we want to think about it again. You don't want to have this mentality of, oh, I don't need this, I'm never going to need it, this is so not important. It might be, let's not run the risk, okay? And there are other questions that we can come up with when we're talking about applications. So again, just keep it in mind as you are learning, okay? Especially if it's a subject you don't like. Now, our final dimension that we'll talk about are the different interpretations. Okay, how has this been interpreted by others? Now, if you speak more than one language, this is something that you might be thinking about, like the differences between something that's maybe written in English and Spanish. Things can sometimes be lost in translation, right? So you might think about it that way if you have access to the material in another language. Some other ways that we can use the word interpreted is maybe artistic representation, right? So how has this been interpreted through dance or through music or through art? And we'll take, again, gravity, because we've been breaking down the subject a little bit all day, all morning, this morning, and we found a whole line of sculptures that are categorized as gravity-defying sculptures. Okay, so they look like this. So this is the first one, and it is called The Force of Nature by Lorenzo Quinn. This is something that I found to be pretty cool. I mean, I don't understand how the statue is staying upright. You'd think it topple over because of that silver ball there. Okay, I think the sculpture is in Shanghai. Then we've got this one in the Fontainebleau in Paris. Again, I don't know if I would want to walk anywhere near that. It feels like it, you know, your brain is telling you that's not normal, that's supposed to fall over, right? What amount of formaldehyde and glue is keeping that animal upright like that? We've got the floating rocks in Cairo. Again, this is something odd. It's just being held up by the rope itself. So, I mean, if you know rope, that's not very strong. It doesn't necessarily have the capacity to hold down a big boulder. So how is this all staying upright? And these book sculptures in Madrid, Spain. Okay, so it's just interesting to think about how these artists were able to create these sculptures, these gravity-defying sculptures. Okay, because again, we've already talked about what goes up comes down. So your brain might be telling you that doesn't make sense. There's no way, no amount of glue can keep the sculpture up, right? And so we won't necessarily explain how each artist actually was able to create these. You're going to have to do that one on your own, because again, we just want you to better understand the subject by means of questions, okay? Which we've hopefully asked many today, and that will prompt you now to research a little bit more on the subject of gravity. All right. So let's run through the 6 questions again. I think for next week, if you want to stop by, I'm going to try to include a PDF where you can download and fill in these 6. So I'll create like a little template if you want to use this as a guide when you're reading, so you can assess your comprehension. So the first one would be explaining something, talking about the different perspectives, or just doing a rundown on everything we've talked about. Your self-knowledge. Okay, we talked about empathy, feeling, we talked about practical application, and our final point was the artist representation. Okay, so something else that can help with comprehension, and I'm giving you a small taste as to what to expect if you were to take our speed reading crash course or our speed reading workshop that we offer. We talk about how inspecting something can boost your comprehension as well. So when you are about to read something, we want you to inspect it first. We want you to look at the intro, the headings and subheadings, the words in bold and or italics, the titles of charts, tables, and diagrams, the conclusion, as well as any questions that are published in the piece. So we want you to look at all of this before you actually start to read. Most of us are primed to read from beginning to end. We don't want you to do that because, for one, and we talk about this in our speed reading workshop, but for one, our attention may not be all the way there, right? For another, you don't know if you have enough coffee in your bloodstream, or maybe you drank too much, so maybe this is not a good time to read all of that. You're not always ready to jump right into the material, so we want to make sure that we are. Okay, let's now try this together. We're going to inspect an article, and I'll inspect it with you all. So this is going with the flow. And by the way, if anyone wants a copy of any of the articles that we have used, they are all pulled from a book called Focus, A Simplicity Manifesto in the Age of Distraction by Leo Babauta. He has given us permission to share this book with our participants. So if you would like a copy of the book, I can send it to you. I will just I'll share my email at the end of the presentation, and you can reach out and I'll get you a free copy, no problem. Okay, so let's inspect. It says, going with the flow. Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like. By Lao Tzu. Okay, so number one, realize that you can't control everything. Number two, become aware. Number three, breathe. 4, get perspective. 5, practice. 6, laugh. 7, realize you can't control others. And the passage is selected from the book I shared earlier, Focus, A Simplicity Manifesto in the Age of Distraction by Leo Babauta. Now, we have a good understanding of what to expect in this article, right? So let's finish reading the article. I'll give you 2 minutes to read as much as you can, and then we'll talk about your comprehension. You have to give yourself a comprehension score the second time too, okay? So I'll disable my webcam. Here we go. You'll notice the timer ticking away in the middle. 3, 2, 1, go. Okie dokie. So we finished reading the article. What did you think about inspecting first and then reading after? Do you feel like your comprehension is a little higher now, maybe in comparison to the first time we did this exercise? Okay, so again, something to keep in mind, a tool. We have hopefully sharpened your comprehension to it just a little bit by means of today's workshop. Okay, and again, remember, obviously if we made an improvement, that's great. If not, that's okay. This might be the first time that a lot of us are even talking about something like this, or we're hearing something like this, so no worries if you didn't make as much improvement as you wish you had. That just means you have to take a longer course, right? Or just rewatch the recording again, and we'll run through the same things again. Okay, so with that, remember, inspecting is essentially just getting the gist of what you read first. I want to quickly share the IRIS method with you all. We talked a little bit about inspecting. We want you to inspect anything you have to read before you read it. We want you to read, ask questions, and then store. So inspect, decide if you have to read it, ask all the questions which we talked about, and then you can move on to the final step, which is memorizing. All right, if you are anything like I was when I was in high school, I would just try to memorize whatever for the sake of memorizing it, take the test, not do so well, right, and just get an okay or a mediocre grade. So we don't want to do that. We want to have a system in place to better read and learn. Okay, so this is what we call the IRIS method, 4-step process to better reading and learning. Now, if you'd like a copy of the book, you can find that if you send me an email, cynthia@irisreading.com. Let me know you were here today, and I can get you that book in about 5 seconds. Thank you so much for coming. Again, my email is cynthia@irisreading.com. If you would like a PDF with the questions written out, maybe something you can fill in, send me an email and I can get that to you. Also, please don't forget to check out our social media. Please do not forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and we hope to see you in a future workshop, everyone. Thank you for stopping by.